Hey guys, my name is Tom. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Tom. My sobriety date is May 30th, 1986. My home group, as is Dottie's, is the Lakewood Ranch Midday Group down in Brandenton, Florida. We meet every day, 7 days a week, 11:30 in the morning. When the weather is nice, we're outside under the trees. It's also referred to as the Under the Trees group. So if you're ever down in that area around lunchtime, please stop by and see us. It's on the corner of Highway 70 and Lakewood Ranch Boulevard, really easy to find. I have a sponsor. My sponsor is Jimmy A. He lives up in the Jersey Shore, and a couple of guys here, Chris and Thomas, have met him. Maybe some of you other guys have heard him speak. So you have to know that I'm the backup speaker. Because Chris, as I get the story, I think Chris met Jimmy several years ago out at State Line in Las Vegas at a great AA conference out there. So he reached out to my sponsor up in Jersey and said, hey, can you speak? And Jimmy said, well, I went back to Jersey. I'm not here, but you can call Tom. So I'm the backup guy, and I would have rather listened to Jimmy tonight, too. But Jimmy's a great guy. My life has never been the same since meeting him 5 years ago and going through this work again at 32 years of sobriety at the time. I was once again rocketed into a fourth dimension, and I didn't think that was possible. I'm involved in service with my home group in my district, and I also do work with the General Service Board in New York. And finally, I have the great privilege of sponsoring men in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Taking other guys and walking shoulder to shoulder with them to pass along what was so freely given to me, to pass along the message of Alcoholics Anonymous that there is hope. So welcome to all the newcomers and the folks coming back and the folks coming in for the first time. If you have a problem with alcohol, you're in the right place. And I'll also tell you that you never have to drink again. And that was something that I heard when I first came into AA. You never have to drink again. I had never heard that, right? I just thought that's what you do, right? Especially when you're, in your teens, upper teens and your early 20s, you drink. What do you mean you don't have to drink again? So that was news to me. So if you're new here tonight and you never heard that before, you don't have to drink again. There is a solution. The solution is in the big book. The solution is in these steps. And the solution is what we share with each other through sponsorship and what we give away in service. So get involved in those three legacies, right? The unity of being with the fellowship, the recovery of working the steps actively in your life, and the service of giving this away. And if we do that, my experience is if I do that, if I stay in the middle of those three legacies, my life is pretty good. I don't think of drinking. I'm not doing harm in my life to others, right? So that's a little bit about me. My allergies are bad, so excuse me for the coughing tonight. What else was there? So Chris reaches out to me like 2 days ago, and I get the text. And of course, so the way I was raised in AA was whenever you're asked, to do something in AA, the answer is yes. So I stand here today with 37 plus years of sobriety, and whenever I'm asked to do something, that rule still applies. Right? It's not, oh, well, I got this time in the program, I can now choose. That's not a good thing for me. Choosing isn't a good thing. I'm always going to take the easier, softer way. Right? I'm always going to take something that's going to take care of Tom's comfort, right? Rather than giving, right? So, Chris texts me, he says, hey, can you come? And, I said, sure. So the next text I get says, okay, we meet at 7 o'clock. We're a pretty big group. Wear court clothes. I don't know you guys, right? I'm 2 hours away from here, and I thought, basketball court? I mean, this is like a really casual meeting. This is a casual meeting, right? And I got to tell you, for you guys that might not realize this, you have something really, really special happening in this room. And I've been in a lot of AA rooms, in my sobriety. Dottie mentioned it too, and we didn't coordinate it. You have a spirit going on in here. You have a vibe going on in here. I hear it, right? You can hear it too if you listen before the meetings. You hear the chatter, the din around the room. And after the meetings, that's sobriety. That's the sound of sobriety. That's the sound of love, right? All I had was a lot of noise in my head before I came here. You have that going on here, right? We've got newcomers in here. That's great. You got folks with time. That's great. You even have the concepts up. That's that's amazing. So keep coming back. Stay plugged into this group. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, but for you newcomers, right? This is a good place to be. I could tell you that, right? And so how do you navigate? Okay, so this is a good one. What about the other days of the week? Well, you find the folks around here, right, where maybe this is their home group. This is what I did. And you go up to them and you say, what other meetings do you go to? Where do you go on Saturday? Where do you go on Sunday? Where do you go on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? You get it, right? For me, when I got sober, I wanted to be joined at the hip with my sponsor. Where are you going, Joe? Today, right? Great privilege. I get to visit my sponsor. I get to, spend time with him and sleep in his house when I'm visiting Jersey. I tell my sponsees this, I get to spend time with my sponsor and spend the whole weekend with him or whatever. And they're like, what? Like all that time, Yeah, he has what I want. That's why he's my sponsor. And I don't want to miss anything that he's giving away. I need it. I'm a really sick guy. So, all right, so what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I grew up in the Bronx. That's in New York. I'm the oldest of five. We have 5 kids in our family, middle-class family. And, I had a normal childhood. I didn't have any of the trauma that a lot of people, have to endure as they're growing up. I was very fortunate that I didn't have any of that. I had a very happy childhood until I think it was age 5. And then everything changed, right? Well, what happened at age 5? Well, I went to kindergarten. You see, this thing keeps moving. Before I went to kindergarten, as I look back on it, I was happy, joyous, and free. Before I went to kindergarten, I could just play freely in this, in a playground, in a schoolyard, with friends in the neighborhood. I didn't have a care in the world. I went to kindergarten, and all of a sudden I'm standing in the schoolyard, and there's a bunch of you in the corner back there, and you're kind of talking. Maybe 3 or 4 of you, you're talking back there, and I know you're talking about me. And then there's a few over here, and you're laughing. And you're just laughing away, and I know you're laughing at me. And you're making fun of me. And I didn't feel like I fit in, and I didn't want to be there. And that doesn't make me an alcoholic, but something happened, right? At a real young age, where I felt like I didn't belong. I was raised Catholic, and I went to a Catholic school, and for Halloween that year, they allowed the kids to dress in costumes. So back then, I guess now with all the movie remakes, it's the same, but, the kids were dressed up as Superman, Batman, Robin, Spider-Man, the Green Hornet. That was, I think, my favorite, the Green Hornet. And I was dressed up like the Pope. I had the robe, the little beanie, slippers, the staff and all that kind of stuff. And let me tell you, it's hard to be the Pope when you're 5 years old. That's a lot of pressure on you. It's even more pressure when you're an adolescent guy trying to be the Pope. In those robes, they can hide a lot of stuff that's on the inside, right? They look good on the outside. Everything is nice and shiny, and and it looks like everything's together. But on the inside, there's all this turmoil, right? There's all this longing and this loss and just confusion, right? And not feeling like I fit in. But on the outside, everything looks good, right? I continue to do that in my drinking. As long as everything on the outside looks good, then there's not a problem. Just don't look inside. Since I was in Catholic school, I was an altar boy, and big parish in New York, in the Bronx, Holy Rosary Parish. And I guess I started around, 5th or 6th grade, but by the time I was in 7th grade, I was the head altar boy of that parish. Now, this is a lot of responsibility. Some of you guys, maybe you've had this experience. But this is this was a big, every mass you go to, you got to make sure, it's covered, right? If it's not there, you step in and you take care of it. Make sure the weddings are taken care of, the funerals, and everything is, ironed and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of responsibility for a guy in the 7th grade, for a kid in the 7th grade. But what you need to know is that there was no head altar boy at Holy Rosary Parish in the Bronx. I only thought I was. I only acted like I was. I only thought you should do what I wanted you to do or told you to do because I was in charge. Now, this doesn't make me an alcoholic, but there was something different, right? Something in my thinking where, Bill talks about it, right? Always, I strove to be at the top of the heap or I tried to hide underneath it, right? All or nothing. I'm either going to, be in charge or I'm not even going to play. When I was in high school, I used to catch, and I switched high schools and I wanted to try out for catcher, and I loved playing baseball. And a couple of the guys that were there, they said, well, we got 2 catchers and they're really good. There's no way you're going to make it, so I didn't show up. Right? I don't want to fail. I don't want you to see that I'm going to fail. I don't want you to see that I'm fragile, that I'm broken, that I'm weak. Right? I just won't show up, and I can keep the outside looking good, unblemished. Right? When meanwhile I'm running away. My first drink, I was in 8th grade, and somehow I found a bottle of Colt 45 malt liquor. I think I stationed myself outside of a deli and convinced some guy to buy me a bottle of beer, and then I took it behind this big, huge boulder, one of those glacial rocks if you've ever been up north. And I hid behind that rock, and I drank that bottle of Colt 45. And then I started walking home, and on the way home, I walked by this girl's house that I had a crush on. Janet was her name. And of course, I had never said anything. She was a cheerleader, all that kind of stuff. I had never said anything to her in school. I was always the odd guy out. I was the fat kid, and, he used to pull my hair and that kind of stuff. I guess today they call that bullying, but anyway, so I'm walking by Janet's house, and, I had liquid courage in me now. I had had this drink. So I walked up the stairs to her house, and I pushed that doorbell. And then I turned around and I ran away as fast as I could. Right? So this is really the story of my drinking. If you really think about it, what did my first drink look like? Well, I got the alcohol and I hid. Right? I hid. I didn't want you to see what I was doing. Second, I did something that I wouldn't have otherwise done had I not been drinking. Right? I walked up there and I rang that doorbell. And then third, I tried to run away from the consequences as fast as I could. Of course, as my drinking went on over the years, the consequences were getting closer and closer and closer and bigger and bigger and bigger, like they do for many of us. After high school, I graduated. My parents wanted me to go to college. I didn't want to go to college. I just wanted to do what 19-year-old guys want to do, and just drink every day. I don't know how that math would have worked out. I don't want to work. I don't want to go to school, but I just want to party all the time. But maybe some of you have that same formula in your head, right? But anyway, my dad and mom were pressuring me to kind of do what they wanted me to do, and I said, screw this, and I joined the Navy. And like 2 weeks after they kind of said, you have to do all these things, I was like, I'm out of here. So I joined the Navy, went to Great Lakes for boot camp. I was a field medic, combat medic with the Marines, hospital corpsman, if you're familiar with the Navy. And it was during that time that my drinking really just took off, because now there were no constraints, right? As long as you showed up to work on time, you wore the right uniform, you brushed your teeth, combed your hair, you're in good shape. And then after you worked, then, no holds barred. And this is how my drinking, the progression of my drinking was very, very fast. This is what it looked like. Like I said, I had only drank at one time in 8th grade and maybe once in high school. Really unremarkable. But then I'm alone and I'm out in the Navy, in the real world, right, in the Navy. And this is what my progression looked like. It starts at a bowling alley, right? I don't bowl, but, we were at the bowling alley. And it's, first night it's a pitcher of beer, right? And then a couple days later, it's 2 pitchers of beer coming around while we're bowling. And then a few days later, it's 3 pitchers of beer. And then before you know it, there's the waitress with the whole platter of pitchers of beer. And then after a little while, maybe a month or two, bowling alleys close pretty early, like 9, 10 o'clock. That's kind of early. Actually, the fuse had been lit, right? That's the truth. I didn't realize it at the time. Just bowling alleys close pretty early. Why don't we go to the club, right? And then and the hard liquor, and then you stay there till the club closes. So it's very, very fast. So here's something to think about. When I was drinking, I wouldn't know you from anybody, and I'd be in a bar, and we'd be in a bar together, and you'd say, here, drink this. It's really, really good, and I'd take it, and I'd drink it, right? And then I'd meet you maybe in the alley next to the bar, right, after the bar closed, and you'd say, here, take one of these. It's really, really good. I'll take it. Smoke this, right? Snort that. All right, do it. Then I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and somebody says, well, why don't you try 90 meetings in 90 days? Oh, no, I don't need that. Why don't you get a sponsor? No, I'm not going to do that. It's crazy, right? That's an alcoholic mind. That's a mind that's working against me. That's a mind that's going to kill me. That's a mind that's going to send me right back to drinking again. And if I drink again, I'm not coming back because I'm an alcoholic. So my drinking progressed, and it was just wild. This was the early 80s, and I was stationed out in California in the desert, and they didn't have drug testing in the Navy. So, anything that I could get my hands on, to alter the way I felt. The problem is I didn't feel comfortable in my skin. I didn't fit. But as soon as I took a drink or any other kind of substance, that kind of just fell away. The problem was, over time, I needed more and more of whatever it was to try and get to that feeling. And then at the end, it gets to the point where I can't even get to the point where I'm okay with myself after kind of drinking all night, right? It doesn't work anymore. So after a few years of this, out in the desert, I was like, well, okay, what's next? Okay, I got a job. I'm doing pretty good in the Navy. I know what does the adult do? You get married, right? So, I found a hostage, and we never should have been together, never should have been married, but, I thought that's what you're supposed to do. And, it was wrong, right? I was unfaithful the week before the marriage. I was unfaithful the week after the marriage, right? It's not a marriage. My drinking was just progressing. It was just crazy, insanity. I had several affairs. And then about 2 years after that, my then wife, she discovered this, and she was going to leave. I realize this now, looking back on it, didn't know it at the time. She said she's going to leave, so what happened? We got pregnant. And what I realize now is, the deliberate manipulation that if you get pregnant, you can't leave. That wasn't a conscious decision that I made, but that is, in fact, what happened, right? This manipulative mind, so that I can keep getting what I want, no matter what it does to you. So we had a baby, and then a couple years later, she caught me in another affair. And on May 30th, 1986, I woke up. It was a Friday morning, Jacksonville, Florida. I got sober. And my then wife wasn't in the bed. That wasn't any big deal. And nothing remarkable the night before. And I was making my way to the shower to wash up and go to work. And I looked in our son's bedroom, and the drawers to his dresser were open. And that was weird. And the clothes were halfway out of the drawer, and some were on the floor. And I looked outside, and they were down, kind of strewn down the stairs going down. That was unusual. And he wasn't in the bed. And I ran to the front window, and I looked out the window, and the car was gone. And standing there in my bedroom, I was exactly where Bill writes on page 8 of the Big Book, where he says, quicksand surrounded me in all directions. Alcohol had become my master. I had met my match. I was alone. I had no place to turn. Now, there's nobody in my family that I'm aware of that was an alcoholic. I didn't get a DUI. I didn't go to counseling. I didn't go to treatment. None of that. My parents, nothing. So I didn't have, the AA background. But I knew for a long time before coming into Alcoholics Anonymous that I was an alcoholic. So I'm standing there, right? Quicksand surrounds me in all directions. And I had actually finally got to the point the place where I always wanted to be. Just leave me alone. Just get away from me. And all I can do is describe to you what happened. As I stood there, it was as if there was this flicker of a flame right here. And I knew if I would have told one more lie, it would have been blown out. And what happened was I fell to my knees and I said, God, help me. And the next thing was I opened the nightstand and I took out a telephone book and I looked up Alcoholics Anonymous. How did that happen? Nobody told me I had an alcohol problem. Nobody told me about AA. I didn't go to counseling or treatment or anything. How did I know to look up Alcoholics Anonymous? The only thing that had changed was I had asked God for help. So I called the intergroup in Jacksonville, Florida, and a lady named Elaine answered the telephone. And I told her I needed to know where there was a meeting. How did I know to say that? I didn't know anything about AA. But those are the words that came out of my mouth. The only thing that had changed was I had asked God for help. She told me where there was a meeting that night, Kingsley Avenue, 2nd floor above the locksmith shop. Could I get there? Yeah, I could get there. All right, that was that phone call. Next phone call was to my boss, Frank. I used to go drinking with Frank at lunch every day. This was his idea. I was okay with it. As a matter of fact, after doing that, and I got into this new job, after doing that for a couple of months, I told Frank, I said, look, I can't go anymore. And he says, well, why not? I said, look, we're working in a warehouse here. There's heavy equipment. If somebody gets hurt and they find out I've been drinking, it's not going to be good. And he said, Tom, you're right. From now on, you don't have to come back in the afternoon. My next call was to that guy. And I said, Frank, this is Tom. Karen's gone. She's taken Michael. I don't know where they are. I'm going to be in a little bit late for work. You see, I can't even see the truth from the false anymore. I'm just going to be a little bit late for work. The truth is, my life is falling apart. My marriage is on the rocks. I have an alcohol problem and I don't know what to do. But this is just another day in the life of an alcoholic. I'm just going to be a little bit late. I'm going to clean up what Frank told me. Frank said, Tom, don't worry about, coming in today. What you need to do is go out and get really messed up. I said, no, Frank, that's the last thing I need to do. Where did those words come from? I could not have formulated those words at that point. And even if I could have, I wouldn't have said that to my boss. I got an alcohol problem. I wouldn't have said it. Where did that come from? The only thing that had changed was I asked God for help, and I talked to a member of Alcoholics Anonymous on the telephone. I was 26 years old when that happened. I was drinking at least a fifth of hard liquor every day, and if I didn't have a drink by 5 o'clock at night, I would be trembling, and I would break out in a sweat so bad my t-shirt would just be sweat through in no time. And I went to work that day, and 5 o'clock came, and I didn't start trembling, and I didn't break out in a cold sweat. And I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that night, and I haven't had a drink since then. When I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I walked through that door, I didn't know what I was walking into, but I know the feeling I had when I walked in is I knew everything was going to be okay. I didn't know what you guys did. I didn't know what I'd have to do. I couldn't even think that coherently. I just knew I needed help. And nobody even said anything yet, but just coming in and being among you, I knew everything was going to be all right. My first meeting was a candlelight meeting, and this is how it went. I sat in the back of the room so you wouldn't see me. And they read the preamble, they read how it works, the traditions. At the time, they read out of the 24-hour book. They did announcements, they gave out chips, they passed the basket, and then everybody stood up and they said the Lord, held hands and said the Lord's Prayer. This takes about 12 minutes. And I remember standing there holding hands saying the Lord's Prayer, thinking, if this is Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm screwed. If all AA is, I come in here and I hear a few readings and I throw $1 in the basket and then I say a prayer. If this is AA, I'm screwed. And this guy named Sam came up to me. He saw I was a newcomer. Probably spelled that I was a newcomer. And he said, look, man, he says, what we do is we get all that business stuff out of the way, and then we recharge our coffee cups. We come in here, we light the candles, and then we have the meeting until we're done. And if Sam wouldn't have come up and told me that, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. I would have walked out of that room saying Alcoholics Anonymous isn't going to work for me. Right? So when you see a newcomer, and we know who they are, get out of your seat, get your feet moving, bring them in. Right? I got a sponsor, as Dottie mentioned. I ended up moving in with my sponsor after that wife had left. And it was great, right? He was taking me through the steps. Joe told me you have to get through the steps in the first year. Not that it has to take a year, but what he was doing was just putting a stake in the sand, right? Saying this work has to get done. And I'm glad that he did that, right? Because it gave me the impetus to move forward, to do the work. For about 3 months, I was doing what, some refer to as the 3-step, waltz, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. For many of us, it's 1, 2, 3, back out. Right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. People say, you're doing your 4th step? What step are you on? Working on your 4th? Oh, yeah, I'm working on it. Yep. Right? You all know what that means. I'm not doing anything. After about 3 months, it was another Friday night. I think Friday nights are important in my life. Today's Friday night, right? They are important in my life. It was a Friday night, and I called Joe. I had moved out from him after a few months. I called Joe, and I said, Joe, I can't take the pain anymore. You see, I was just getting by on the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was just coming to meetings. I wasn't doing any of the steps. I wasn't doing any of the work. What does that mean? I wasn't changing. The only thing that had happened was I stopped drinking, and I started going to meetings instead of going to bars. But there was no change happening. And I tell you, I don't know about you guys, but after 3 months of no change, it gets pretty crazy up here. And the only way me, as an alcoholic, gets relief from that is to drink. And I called Joe and I said, Joe, I can't take it anymore. And he said, I'll be right over. And he came over to my apartment, and he had a legal pad and a pen, and he threw it at me, and he said, start writing your 4th step. And then he went into the kitchen and he proceeded to rearrange all of my cupboards. He moved stuff from here to there. And when he was done rearranging everything, he'd look over the kitchen bar and say, are you done yet? No, I'm still writing. And he'd rearrange again. And am I done? Okay. And he kept doing that. And after about 2.5 or 3 hours maybe, he looked over, he said, are you done? I said, yeah, I'm done. He stopped, thank God. And he came around and he sat down next to me on the sofa and he said, all right, let me see that. And we started talking about each of those things that were on my 4th step list. And we got down to the causes and the conditions. What were the things that were the character defects in me, that were driving me my whole life, right? That were causing me to do all of this harm and this damage and the fear, the shame, the guilt, the remorse. And we got down to the causes and conditions. And after a few hours of doing that, he had reduced it to a list, like index card size. And he put it right, like in front of my nose, and here's all my character defects. He puts it right in front of my nose, and he says, do you want to be like this? It's a no-brainer. No, I don't want to be like that. And he said, good, that's the 6th step. Let's get on our knees and do the 7th step, prayer. And that's what we did. That night, the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous became an escalator for me. That night, I got to see how the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, just without effort, will flow from one right into the next, into the next, into the next. Instead of these static steps that, oh my God, how am I going to surmount those? No, if I take this one, it naturally leads me into that next one. Now, of course, I tell guys I work with, I said, if you're standing at the foot of the stairs and you look at like 7th step and you say, I'm going to go there, right? You're probably going to fall on your face. You're probably going to get hurt. You're probably not going to make it, right? But if I just take that first step, lift my feet like 6 inches or 7 inches, and I get on that first step, and I get a good foundation under me, the second step is just another 6 inches. And once I'm on the second step, the third, the fourth, right? It's doable. Believe me, if I could do it, it's doable. And they are. One sets me up for the next. I moved, I got transferred. So it's a good thing Joe told me to, put that year out there. I got orders to leave Florida to go to California at 14 months of sobriety, but I had been through all the steps, right? I'm driving across the country going to California in my little Honda Civic. And I got like the big book next to me, and I got like the little pocket meeting thing. I'm reading to myself. There are no cell phones back then, right? No CDs or anything. I did have cassettes. I'm listening to speakers all along the way. Whenever I stopped for the night, I found an AA meeting, went to an AA meeting. I'm doing everything I can for my sobriety. I think I'm doing pretty good, right? Feeling good, not thinking of drinking. I get to San Diego. I got the number for the intergroup for San Diego, and I'm going to call intergroup. I'm at a 7-Eleven, at a payphone, got a quarter in this hand, the intergroup number on this hand, and I'm ready to go, right? I'm about to drop the quarter in there, and here's the thought that goes through my head. If I have a drink, nobody's going to know. You see, I have an alcoholic mind, and that doesn't go away. This is why I need the daily reprieve. This is why I need to keep coming back. This is why I need to keep working this program. This is why I need to stay in the middle of those 3 legacies of unity, of recovery, and of service. Because left to my own devices, the thought I'm going to have, if I have a drink, nobody's going to find out. Maybe I can just come here and kind of hide it. You guys know that's not going to work, right? Drive me crazy. And as a matter of fact, for me, for this alcoholic, if I were to do that, you just would never see me again because my pride would keep me out. You read about some guy that jumped off the bridge. That's what alcohol will do to me. I was in the Navy, as I mentioned. I think we've moved 14 times in my sobriety and in my career. And AA has always been there. I got new sponsors in most of the places where I went. In some places I cooked in the whole one. AA has always been there. 5 years ago, we had moved from Jacksonville up to North Carolina, and I was looking for a new sponsor. And I was in Atlanta, and I ran into my now sponsor, Jimmy. And we talked for about 3 minutes. One night, it was a Saturday night, we talked about 3 minutes as we were walking to our hotel rooms. And as I'm walking to him, we kind of said, good night. We kind of split up, and the thought going through my mind was, I got to get that guy's phone number. So the next morning, I got up early. I hunted him down, and I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me. He said, yeah, I remember you. Right? Yeah, I remember you. What do you want? And I said, I was wondering if I could get your number. Yeah, he gave me his phone number. And then I sought him out the next day, and I said, look, I'm looking for a new sponsor. And he asked me some questions. And that following Tuesday, this was before COVID, we started working on FaceTime. And he took me through the steps again. And he took me, brand new big book. Here's the trick. I'm going to tell you guys the trick, all you newcomers, right? You say open to the first page in the big book, and usually it's like Bill's story, right? No, the first page is like the cover, right? He says, what's on that page, on the inside cover? I said, nothing. He says, well, that's what you know about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was like, well, don't you know who you're talking to? 32 years. But the point is, I have to have an open mind. If I think I know everything, I'm not going to learn anything. If I think I know everything, I'm not going to change. And I need to change. Right? Jimmy started taking me through the work. My life has never been better. When I opened up, I told you, again, I was rocketed into a 4th dimension beyond anything I ever knew possible. So I know I'm at time. There's a speaker up in New York. Some of you may have heard him. I love listening to Paul McHugh. And oftentimes when he closes his talks, he closes them with this, and I think it's great, and this is what I'm going to leave you with tonight. everybody, but especially the newcomers. Alcoholics Anonymous is like this great big buffet. Right? Think of the best buffet, wedding, just a feast. Just long tables of food. Alcoholics Anonymous is big buffet. Come all the way in. Sit all the way down. And take advantage of everything that's on offer. We don't have to sit in the corner and say, well, I'll just take these little few crumbs. That's not what AA is about. Come all the way in, sit all the way down, and take advantage of everything that AA has to offer. Thanks for your attention tonight.